Okay, so I'm a comic book nerd. I have loved comic books ever since I was a little girl because my sister is older than me. She was born in 79. So from the day, ever since we were little, she would always give me her old comic books. She would show me all those different things. And so growing up, I learned to love it. And my mom, even though she's not like a comic book nerd like I am, she loved, X-Men, Batman, Superman. She loves those comic book movies, comic book stories. So within my household, it was something that I just grew up with. And, as I got older, I realized the whole thing between, DC, Marvel, which is better. And, I, towards the end, as I really thought about it and thinking about making this video, why I am a Marvel. Because, quite frankly, Marvel disappoints me sometimes, a lot of times, especially with their new endeavors, like them going in with Disney. Didn't know what the fuck that was about, but okay. And then they just they'll make stories that just don't make sense to me, and there'll be times where I just really get angry with the direction of which their writing and character development is going, especially with a lot of Spider-Man stuff. You guys know what I'm talking about with Spider-Man, his bullshit story with him. Anyway, but at the end of the day, I can say I really, really love Marvel. And the reason is why is because with DC, I feel like their characters, for the most part, are icons. That they are the epitome of what superheroes are supposed to be. Even more conflicted characters like Batman. They are icons because they are willing to give everything they have for this cause. They have dedicated their lives, their energy, their money to this cause. And there was even a time where it becomes where their mask is their identity and that's who they are. Like, there are times when I just think there is no Bruce Wayne. There is only Batman. Because everything Batman is who Bruce Wayne really is. Bruce Wayne is Batman pretending of what he is. That's what all of them kind of are doing. They're just pretending to fade into normal society. That's not who they are. They are Black Canary, Green Arrow. Those are their identities. These other people are just what they do in daylight hours. And there's that going on. And while it has their own characteristics and what they can do psychologically for them, that's that. But for the most part, they are their cows. They are their masks. With Marvel, it's so much more human. Like, growing up, the X-Men was that one show, that one comic series where I could really read it and I could understand the X-Men. It was the first time I read a comic book series, a comic book thing where I could relate to the story and the characters 100%. It's the whole people hate them because they don't understand them because they're different. Anyone can relate to that, especially someone who's a minority, someone who's sexual orientation. It was a series, and a comic book series that was made for the everyday person. Most of Marvel's characters have this huge conflict between who they are and the sacrifices they make to become superheroes. And that is what makes them, in my opinion, more relatable than the DC characters. Because sometimes we'll have that conflict in DC, but in Marvel, it is so much more apparent. Especially with series like Spider-Man, and Fantastic Four, where they really want to have a family, but this whole thing between their family life, who they are is these things. They are Sue Summers, all those things. Those are their identities. Their alter egos are those other people. Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Peter Parker is who he is. Spider-Man is who he puts on himself to become. And they want to be these regular people, but they have these powers and they feel a responsibility. But at the same time, they want so badly to just be normal. Even more than I think the DC characters do. That's just how I have always viewed it. And I feel like I can relate to Marvel in so many ways. I can relate to Cyclops, Spider-Man, all of them. In some way, shape, or form, I can relate to them and how they deal with their lives. With DC, it's kind of like, no matter how hard I may try, and even though I can understand the character, there is no way I can relate to Wonder Woman in any way. Even with X-Men and them having their powers, even with their powers, I can relate to Rogue. I can relate to Jean, who I hate. I can relate to Emma Frost. I can relate to them and their struggles more than I can relate to any of the superpowered characters in DC. I can't relate to Wonder Woman in any way, shape, or form. Even characters I feel more like Black Canary. Can't relate to her. Can't relate to Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, any of them. Because they are so beyond the veil of just humanity. They are beyond that point. I mean, just even Magneto and the Joker, of like two of my favorite like villains of all time. Like Magneto? Can I relate to him? Of course. There are times when I literally feel like he's right. There are times when I just hear him talk about how humanity will never be able to accept them. And just thinking about the struggles of my family and ancestors and stuff, I can relate to that 100%. I can understand his drive, his anger, his fuel. I can understand why he has become a villain. Because when I kind of think about him, I think of him as like other gang members. Not the ones that we have today, but in the past who became gang members to protect themselves and their community from outside sources. That's how I can view Magneto, and I can relate to him to real life. Joker is just a psychopath. You know, while he does have that whole thing about one bad day, he's not as relatable. He just wants to create madness. And while that's like some people who could probably relate to that, who are themselves schizophrenic and crazy, Magneto, how can you not relate to that? You understand what it is like to have people come and judge you. Even if you feel that way for some time, you can relate to those things. And that's why I'm a Marvel. Because the characters can relate to you. And while they disappoint you, as boy do they disappoint you, and I think their disappointments of the Marvel characters and what they do somehow makes them even more human. They're so flawed and so human that even when it disappoints me, it's kind of like I understand. I understand the choices that they make. I can understand them more than I understand DC. Because DC is just larger than life. And I think there was this, it's some random guy, the one who does those Marvel DC videos. He made it so clear in one segment he did. It was about Superman and Superman feeling like obsolete because no one really needed him anymore. And then at the end, they have like Stan Lee come out and say that Superman is the hero that every hero wants to be. That completely selfless person who has given up everything to be Superman, to be a hero. He puts himself on the line 100%. He gives his entire person to being a hero. And every other hero, Marvel, all of them want to be that. That's who they are all trying to become, is Superman. But you can never be Superman. That's why I feel like people always wonder why everyone likes Batman, not Superman. Because Superman, you can never be Superman. You cannot relate to Superman at all. He's not even human. He's an alien. Batman is human, and no one can be Batman, but you could be closer to Batman than you could ever be to Superman. Those unreachable icons and those epitome of heroism is what DC has given the world, and I can appreciate that. And I love DC. I don't say I don't love it, but the relatability and the flaws and just there's something about Marvel that I can read it, hate it, but still want to come back and find out what the characters do, because you become so emotionally attached to these characters because they're just more than just their hero selves. They have their own human flaws that make you care. It's not just the bad guys, it's not just the villains. It's their own personal struggles that make us love them and root for them. And that's why I'm a Marvel. Hope that made sense.